This is Haruki Murakami. And I found the exact moment where he fearlessly pursued his calling. And he went from being someone that owned a small jazz cafe to one of the most renowned and famous modern authors and novelists. And I found this moment in his book, Novelist as a Vocation. And it's this book right here. Hopefully you can see the title. And it's a book where Murakami approaches being a novelist through this lens of vocation. And a vocation is your sacred calling. And what was so interesting is that he wasn't always out there pursuing being a novelist. In fact, he had a very particular moment where he came to realize that he was one, as well as pursue that particular path. And I want to tell you about this moment because it will help anyone who wants to pursue their calling to understand the very first bold steps that need to happen and this trusting that needs to occur of one's true, honest direction. Now, before I explain what this exact moment was, I want to ask you a question. If your calling fell from the heavens into your lap, would you pursue it immediately? Now, the honest truth is that most people would not. They would not go ahead and pursue it. They would not go ahead and go for it, even though they had an experience that this is the thing that I'm born for. And rather than accepting this inner knowing, they would ignore it. Things like paychecks potentially being disrupted if they pursued their calling would be one reason as to why they couldn't. They might even say, hey, if I go and pursue this calling, friends, family, and a collective unknown of people that I don't even know yet, they might start to judge me. They might start to tell me that, hey, what you're doing is wrong, is bad, is incorrect. And they proceed to list out all of these rational reasons as to why this inner knowing should not be pursued. However, if we do accept this moment of deep understanding, this inner knowing that has dropped from the heavens into our lap, it will start to liberate us. It will start to get our vocation and our sacred calling moving in the right direction. And to better understand this, we need only look at Haruki Murakami's path, this author who wrote Norwegian Wood, Kafka on the Shore, Novelist as a Vocation that I just showed you, as an example. Because like I mentioned, as I was reading this book, I found the exact moment. And I want to share that exact moment where Murakami comes into this realization, has this revelation, where he should actually go out and write a novel. And it occurs at a baseball game. Now, I want to read you this passage verbatim so that you can properly hear exactly how this happens. And then at the end, I'm going to explain why so many people do not pursue their calling fearlessly, and how we can start to move through this, move beyond it, and how anybody can start to pursue their calling with a sense of deep conviction and devotion. So I will just go ahead and pull up the page. I'm going to be reading it. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. And it's for those listening and maybe someone that wants to buy the book, it's on page 27. So page 27. I think Hiroshima's starting pitcher that day was Satoshi Takashi. Yakult countered with Takeshi Yasuda. In the bottom of the first inning, Hilton slammed Takeshi's first pitch into left field for a clean double. The satisfying crack when bat met ball resounded through Jingu Stadium. Scattered applause rose around me. In that instant, and based on no grounds whatsoever, it suddenly struck me. I think I can write a novel. I can still recall the exact sensation. It was as if something had come fluttering down from the sky, and I had caught it cleanly in my hands. I had no idea why it had chanced to fall into my grasp. I didn't know then, and I don't know now. Whatever the reason, it had taken place. It was like a revelation. Or maybe epiphany is a better word. All I can say is that my life was drastically and permanently altered in that instance when the leadoff batter, Dave Hilton, belted that beautiful ringing double at Jingu Stadium. After the game, you caught one as I recall. I took the train to Shinjuku, went to the bookstore, picked up a sheaf of writing paper, and splurged on a Sailor fountain pen for 2,000 yen. Word processors and computers weren't around back then, which meant I had to write everything by hand, one character at a time. The sensation of writing felt fresh. I was thrilled. It had been such a long time since I had put fountain pen to paper. So that's the exact moment that Murakami knew that he should write a novel. Now, the biggest thing to notice here is that Murakami did not hesitate after hearing his calling and leapt immediately into action. He was fearless. He left that baseball game, went straight to the bookstore, found paper, found pen, started writing. Within 6 months, he had his first novel written. And this leads me to a very important vocational topic, which is resistance after revelation. Now, resistance after revelation, it's a very simple idea, but it's a powerful idea if you truly absorb this, because it's not simply going to happen one time, it might happen a few times over the trajectory of a path. But the simple idea is that after you have a revelation, an epiphany, an inner knowing, this deeper sense of, oh, I'm meant to go in this direction, you will seek to deny it. You will seek to push it away. Now, this can typically be caused by self-preservation, this wanting to continue on the life as is, even when we know it's wrong, right? We're in that job, we're in that career, we're building that business, and we know that it's not correct. We know that it's not it. It doesn't hit on the soul level. But to change it, to disrupt it, to walk a different path would cause some disruption, possibly destruction to the life, the path that we've built up until that point. And so we deny it because we want to preserve ourselves in that moment. We don't want to change the life. We don't want to change our perception on who we are, because how we've been is allowing us to carry on forward to survive in life. And so even if after we've had this revelation and we know deeply, like, this is true, this is something that I'm meant to do, the more time that passes, the further away we get from that moment of knowing, and the easier it is to deny it and doubt it, meaning that time weakens this revelation. And without a constant return to self, this coming back to who we are at the core, and without a foundational anchor that allows us to be reminded of what our calling actually is in the future, it becomes so easy to doubt, to lose faith in everything that we've experienced over time. And if you want to learn more about that idea of the return to self, you can check out this Dochi video that I did by searching her name on my profile. And I went deep on that concept of this constant return to self, because this singer-songwriter, rapper who is Dochi, ended up using this return to who she was regularly over time, and that was a part of her own personal divine breakthrough. So you can find out a little bit more about it there. And there are two different types of resistance after revelation. The first one is practical resistance after revelation. And this is where the practical areas of life cause resistance to pursuing someone's calling. For example, this can look like denying the call because I've been in this job for a long time. I've been building my career for over a decade. I've been working on my business and I've been building it. And even though I know that this isn't the one, this isn't it, to leave it would mean to disrupt it. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to face that. And there is this underlying fear that if I leave this known place, even though I know it's not correct for me, that I will enter into the unknown, and the unknown will be wrong, won't work out, and then I will be left with nothing. I'll have to go back to square one. And so we resist the calling because it doesn't suit the practical realities of the life that we've built so far. Now, we also fear, often unconsciously, that if we do pursue the calling, and it does go ahead and work out, that it may ask more of us than we've ever had to deal with in our lives. Practical, real responsibility. And that can be terrifying because we don't know if we can handle that, and we don't know if we're going to get crushed by the pressure. Now, in saying all of this, Murakami gives us a real-world example of how these practical realities can be faced. Because we know that Murakami leaves the baseball game, he goes to the bookstore, he gets the pen, he gets the paper, he starts writing, he's got his novel written within 6 months. But what isn't mentioned, and I briefly mentioned it at the beginning, is that Murakami was building a small cafe to support himself and his wife, Yoko Murakami, in order to live. So he was building this cafe, and by pursuing this other path, he was putting this cafe that he'd built over 4 years at risk. And yet, even knowing this, he still took immediate action despite it. And what's fascinating for us to think about is that if Murakami had have entertained that resistance, believed it, decided that no, I shouldn't actually go ahead and go to the bookstore, I've got to keep building my cafe, that this resistance could have cut him off from this revelation and could have cut him off from his path and could have cut him off from ever bringing out the works that he was meant to bring forward into the world. No 1Q84, no Kafka on the Shore. And he's not thinking about the financial viability, and he's not thinking about how this will disrupt the cafe that he's been building and how he might in the future have to sell it and take an income dip, which is actually what he inevitably ended up doing. But instead, he heard the call, he received the revelation, and leapt into immediate action. In other words, he's immersed in the pursuit. He's in it. He's allowing it to unfold without having to have all the answers, without having to have every single thing planned all the way. He heard the call, he went for it. Now, the second type of resistance after revelation is psychological resistance. And this simply means that there are psychological obstacles or barriers that can cause us to deny pursuing our path. So for example, if we get anxiety over the potential of not being good enough, if we put our work into the world, and therefore, why even bother? If that is occurring, it means that this psychological resistance is hijacking the revelation, the calling, what we know to be true. And it can cause us to question, to doubt, to become this non-believer in our own experience. And so once again, this can occur because of self-preservation, but also self-continuity. We have a certain idea of ourselves and our own identity, and to pursue a path that is different, we suddenly call into question all of these fixed markers that we have about who it is that we are at the core. And what we need to understand is that when we build these stone walls around our inner world to protect us from the external world, it ends up suffocating the soul because the soul can't grow or develop or expand, which is what it essentially wants to do. And rather than believing this internal resistance, we instead need to start to believe in our own revelations. And this is what Murakami does. And what's interesting about Murakami immediately leaping into action after his revelation is that we can also imagine a version of Murakami receiving this revelation and starting to think out into the future, well, if I pursue this path, then I might not actually write a good novel. And if I don't write a good novel, then I'm not going to be able to get paid for it. And it'll be this big disappointment. And so maybe I shouldn't even go ahead and go to this bookstore maybe I should just go home. And we can imagine that version not going to the bookstore, going back to the jazz cafe, living a quiet life where they've built up their jazz cafe, but never doing the work that they were born to do, missing out on the pursuit of their vocation, accepting the psychological resistance as this factual reality. And so many people do this, and it's a tragedy, where they never pursue their calling because they've believed in the wrong thing. They've believed in their resistance rather than their revelations, their epiphanies, their inner truths. Now, luckily for us, Murakami believed in his own revelation. He went to that bookstore and he started to write. He literally did what so few people do. He believed in his own experience. He takes his inner world and this revelation as a serious source of truth, allowing it to supersede the realities of how one should pursue their path. Which leads me to one of my favorite sentences in this entire passage, where he says, based on no grounds whatsoever, he believes in his calling based on no grounds whatsoever. And even though he says, based on no grounds whatsoever, in this moment, he grounds himself on the revelation itself. And this is a very strong foundation. And I want to read you this quote, and it happens a little bit later on in the book. It shows the strength of this foundation. And Murakami at this point is beginning to doubt a little bit about his book and the worthiness of his book and how good it is. And he says, under normal circumstances, it would have ended there. I would have walked away. But the epiphany I had received on Jingu Stadium's grassy slope was still clearly etched in my mind. Murakami, novelist of a vocation. Now, here are some helpful questions to ask yourself to help you to fearlessly pursue your own calling. Now, question 1 is, have you ever received an epiphany or revelation about your path and ignored it? If you have, why did you ignore it? Question 2. Do you believe that Murakami would have been better off if he resisted his revelation? Why do you believe this? Question 3. Where do you resist your honest direction? And do you believe you are better off for resisting it? Why do you believe this? Murakami fearlessly pursued his calling, and he showed us through action how we can do the same. But to do this, we have to learn how to overcome resistance after revelation, both practically and psychologically. And whilst most people seek to immediately deny their calling through revelation, epiphany, inner truths being heard within, what if instead of rejecting them, we believed in them? Now, if you do want to learn more about how to know what your calling is, how to choose your career path with deep conviction, then you'll want to go ahead and check out our community and 8-week course where I guide members on how to unearth their own career archetypes so that they can choose their path. And it's an 8-week process. And over the 8 weeks, I take you through these different viewpoints on who you are as an individual. We gather self-knowledge. We go over things like astrology, Jungian psychology, looking at lenses like how many different interests do you have, what is the essence of these interests, what is your life mythology, and how do all of these things come together to reveal the core pattern of the work that you're born for. And there are hundreds, probably thousands, of career archetypes, and everyone unearths the career archetype that is their own so they can walk their specific path in the world with a deep conviction that this is right for them. And we also show you how to structure your path, how your career archetype works in relation to bringing in resources and money, and what the very first steps need to look like in order for you to bring this into the world and into existence. So if you are interested in knowing what your path is with a deep conviction and being around others who are also unearthing their own career archetypes, then you'll want to go ahead and check out the link below.